Yeah, so 800 means disagreeing, discordant, or incompatible, and or inharmonious. And that is something that occurred in the counterfeit relationships, like even in the movies. Um, like there was just this disagreement. Like, the like in the relationships that the guy was in the first movie, like the women, they just were kind of more surface level, more superficial. They didn't like, he was talking about his dreams to her, like the dreams that he would have, and she just was like kind of talking down on him and making him seem like, why are you even talking about this and stuff like that. But when he would talk to his best friend about it, like she would always like understand him and support him and encourage him with when he was talking about his dreams. So that's just an example. Like, there's this harmony that comes with these unions. There's this agreement that comes with them, and in any other relationship, it's just not going to be there. Okay, so yeah, the number 13, it means destruction, ruin, or loss. And it speaks of utter ruin, the kind of loss from which recovery is humanly impossible. The root idea is not momentary damage, but complete annihilation, lives, property, heritage wiped away. Because Scripture views human life as a stewardship under God, the thought of such irreversible loss carries moral weight. Destruction is never merely a tragic accident, but a violation of the created order that calls for divine response. So this context is in the book of Esther, and it says the single occurrence appears on Esther's lips as she pleads with King Ahasuerus. How could I bear to see the disaster that would befall my people? How could I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? So the word crystallizes the stakes of her intercession. Either God overturns the decree or covenant people face total eradication. And so with this, I feel like the Lord was really prompting me, but I think it can also apply for anyone as well that's standing, that um that really has been feeling like the burden of just everything, but God is really calling you to step up as an intercessor in this time, because, you know, if you don't, like, this decree of destruction um is going to take place. And it's really been that's it's really just been the enemy's agenda, but also it could be like you might have kind of felt like forfeiting, this promise. You might have felt like wanting to give up, or your spouse may have been feeling that way. Your person might be feeling like, um you know like, why keep trying, or like there's really nothing that can come from this, or things like that. And if they've been, not in alignment with God, like, you know, um, God doesn't want you to come into agreement with that. Like, stand for them and pray for them, and pray that they would be in alignment with God, and pray that God's will would be done. Theological dimensions, covenant faithfulness. To speak of Israel's destruction is to question whether God's promises can fail. Esther's prayerful appeal, therefore, becomes an appeal to God's steadfast love underlying these promises. Intercessory concern and ministry implications. Esther's question, how could I bear, models the Christ-like heart that feels another's peril as its own. The church is called to carry such burdens, standing in the gap for peoples threatened by spiritual or physical ruin. Her example encourages vigilant awareness of looming decrees that endanger life and faith, bold access to authority in prayer and advocacy, willingness to risk comfort, position, and even life for those on the brink of destruction. So that was really what stood out to me in the numbers I've been seeing lately, and just their meaning. In Strong's, I really just felt like that was really highlighted. I saw 650. Um, it means to keep away from someone, depriving someone, to cheat, taking away what rightfully belongs to someone else. So, that is what the enemy wants to do, and that is what, like, even in the movies, like the counterfeits, like, especially, in the first movie, like, the girl that he was with, like, she was not wanting her and the guy to be together. So she was basically putting herself out there in a way where she was just getting his attention and like trying to keep him to herself. And so yeah, so God has really kind of been, talking to me about like the the counterfeit relationships specifically. So yeah, like for them to like commit to you, they have to be fully committed to God, and that's really kind of like the process that he's bringing them through. Um and yeah, so God said that is why I have to reinstate them before sending them on their mission. So like God was kind of reminding me of the story of Peter and how when he he denied Jesus before the rooster crowed, and he cried and he wept and he was sad, and he wasn't able to really be like in the position to really be of service at that time, but Jesus was able to reinstate him, and that was when he was able to be that leader and do those great exploits like we see in the book of Acts. And so these these sons, these spouses, they have to be reinstated because they may have denied you, they may have denied him through their actions or their words and their thoughts and things like that. And for them to be sent out, they have to be really like put in the right position first, like when you just think about anyone being sent out, like you have to have the right gear, you have to be like in that mental state of readiness and things like that. And that's what God is working on in them as well as in you too, because this is a mission with the both of you, and God is just wanting you to be in position and prepared for that. But just know that like your faith has not been in vain, and yes, they may have been in these counterfeit relationships, but at the end of the day, like it can't replace the real, and that's why God is talking to me about like the counterfeit versus the real. God wanted me to watch the movie Trapped and then write down the definition of trapped. And I didn't know which Trapped movie there was. I had no idea. So I was like, okay, I guess we're going to find a movie called Trapped. But I did write down the definition. And it says trapped refers to being caught, confined, or unable to escape a physical space, an unpleasant situation, or an emotional state. So yeah, that's what trapped means. And that's really how they've been feeling, like especially if they've been in a counterfeit relationship or situation. They felt confined, they felt unable to escape, and it hasn't been a pleasant situation for them. It may be like they're physically unable to, like maybe they are like living close to them, or there's just involvement or ties that are just difficult to get out of, or emotionally they just feel like just not in a great place because of just being in this situation. So it says that the word trapped comes from the word trap, which means to catch or ensnare, and it is used in both literal and figurative contexts. So then I wrote down the key definitions and uses. So there's physical confinement, being locked in, physically obstructed, or enclosed. For example, minors stranded in a collapse, or a mouse in a cage, or caught in a zipper. Yeah, so your spouse might feel trapped in their physical environment. They might feel kind of caged in. Then There's situational and emotional state. So feeling stuck in a bad circumstance, obligation, or relationship with no apparent way out. So that's really just confirming like if they've been in a counterfeit relationship, then they're kind of feeling like they're stuck with no apparent way out. Like they don't see the way out, and that's probably why, if they are still in it, why they haven't come out yet. But we know that Jesus is the way, so they really have to seek the help of Jesus to really get out of it. But it says, for example, feeling trapped in a mundane job or a web of lies. And yeah, web of lies, there may be things that they may have like went along and like genuinely wanted things to work out and genuinely, cared for the person that they were in a relationship with, but there may have been things that they weren't aware of, things that they couldn't see, where if they had seen it, if they had known, they probably wouldn't have made the commitment. But now it's like they're already in it, and now they're being made aware of these things. And I just think like it's kind of interesting that in both movies there was like cheating involved, and there was you know children involved, and the children weren't necessarily a bad thing, but like in both movies, like even though the children happened, like they were a blessing, and they were loved, and it was something that they just chose to embrace. And so that might be the case, like maybe if a child is involved, like, you know, you will have the ability to be with the person God ordained for you, and also be having kind of like this loving family with children. But yeah, like there's been the cheating, there's been the infidelity in some of these counterfeit relationships, and just lies that will be or have been exposed. They may have done certain actions that it may have felt like they were like against you, but it was actually just because of them being feeling like they were stuck in the relationship, like they couldn't really behave the way they wanted to. Like if they weren't in a relationship, like they probably wouldn't have made those decisions, but it's because of them being in that relationship that they are being that way, if that makes sense. um and I feel like also, like, even when in the movies they were with their counterfeit people, it's like they wanted to convince themselves that like the other people that they truly loved were okay, because it would like justify them being in what they were currently in. If the other like person was okay, it would mean that them like not choosing them, or them being involved in like their like alternative options was actually okay, that it wasn't wrong. So it's like basically um in their mind it would mean that it was fine, and that they didn't make the wrong choice. So there, it's kind of like now like they've had like warnings, they've had red flags, but they just chose to kind of go through with it anyway, and just kind of continuing to play into it. And the thing is, like, they are kind of like, in a way, kind of like easy, not easy targets, but it's just like, they have their, um, they may have already felt like insecure or vulnerable beforehand. So, like, when that person came along, it was just easy for them to kind of just like get caught up in all of that. If they weren't really clinging to God, then it's like, of course, it's going to be easy for them to have their hands open to receive whoever comes at them.